Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get going and try to stay on schedule tonight. Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting. This is a community meeting to gather your feedback and input. Sound? Okay. We need to be close to the mic. So good. Thank you for your patience and your attendance tonight. We're going to have 3 development teams come forward tonight, give short presentations, 15 minutes each, and then we're going to open it up for questions and answers. You should have received on your way in a variety of handouts. The first is the agenda, and in the bottom section of that, let me call your attention, there's some additional instructions, which is we have a link to the city's website where we have the proposals available. You can read, in full detail. It has the city council presentations. It has, I think about 20 various reports that have been produced over the years in relation to the Bergamot area plan and the preferred vision for the development of this city-owned property. And I would call your attention to that because the information that we gather tonight, your feedback, we're going to put verbatim in bullets. We're not going to associate names to that, but that's going to be made available. Ultimately, we'll be presenting that to the council as an attachment. So your comments to the comment card section, we have a box on your way out. And likewise, if you want to think more about this or review the proposals, you can fill this out and again submit this electronically, mail it to us, however you'd like. We're planning to collect feedback throughout the month of May, so tonight's not your only night to give input. We similarly have City TV filming in the rear, and so we're going to post tonight's meeting online, and we'll be able to have a YouTube link and Mr. Berman's videotaping as well. And we also have a community feedback form that we would likewise solicit your feedback again tonight if you have the opportunity, if you want to think more about that. Again, the information for contacting and providing that information is on the bottom of the agenda. So without further ado, let me give just a quick overview of really the process to date, the property where we're at. I think most of you are all familiar. And then really open it up to the 3 teams to come and present. We have the Bergamot Limited Group, Jeff Worth Development Team is going to present first, 26 TOD, and then, Rethink Core is presenting first, 26th Street, and then to the Jeff Worth Bergamot Limited Team. So I'll call your attention to the PowerPoint slide. As you can see, highlighted in the yellow outline is Bergamot Station Arts Center. It's a 5.6-acre site. We have 5 buildings, surface parking. You can see the expo station being built on the north side of the property. And then on the lower section, you can see a set of warehouses. We're actually in the middle one. And I want to thank Jeff of Writers Boot Camp for hosting us tonight. And let's give him a big round. And then there's 5.6 acres of city-owned property, 1.3 acres of warehouse private Bergamot property, Santa Monica Museum of Art, Writers Boot Camp. Across the street, Michigan Avenue, is the city yards, corporation municipal. So you have everything from dump trucks and recycling vehicles and trash vehicles, etc. So here's a set of graphic imagery really showing the process to date. And the process really was a Bergamot area plan in recognition of Expo Light Rail, this creative district, the greater Bergamot area, starting in 2010, significant community process in 2011, recognizing a wide range of stakeholders. Community processes kind of highlighted with the yellow stars. And during that Bergamot area planning process was a recognition that Bergamot Station Art Center was a primary anchor for the creative capital district that makes up the larger area. And that preferred vision process was really crucial both in the concurrent review of and development of the Bergamot area plan. Ultimately, that was presented to the council in 2012, in March of 2012, to have them establish and recognize the preferred vision of the Bergamot area plan and of Bergamot Station. That led to the issuance through a request for proposal process. We had 5 teams that submitted interest in wanting to help develop the site for the city. We returned to council in November of that year, of 2012, to have that group shortlisted, and the 3 teams that you're hearing tonight are those individuals. And then they responded with a request for proposal in the summer of 2013, and we've been in due diligence review of those proposals to date. We went to council in February of this year to present a recommendation of 26th Street, and council, in hearing the feedback of the community, requested additional feedback, and that's, again, the meeting tonight. We've been meeting with the Gallery Tenant Association, who will be presenting kind of a white paper policy concepts. And there you see where we are. And we're poised, going forward, to take this information, assess, return to council, potentially later this summer. And at that point, we'll be seeking the authorization to select a team to enter into exclusive negotiating. But let me highlight this element. These are the development objectives of the preferred vision, so extensive community process to envision Bergamot Station. And this list is what council recognized through the process that I just highlighted, and what we had in the request for proposals of asking the teams to develop a concept around. And again, this is a development concept. They still have very extensive, as you'll see here in just in a moment, extensive community process to refine that. But ultimately, the concepts of affordable cultural art spaces. And so that was a mandate that the developers maintain cultural arts, 75,000 square feet at a minimum, and those be below market rate rents to be provided. Had open space and amenities were one of the elements that we were seeking of the development teams. Preservation of existing buildings, variety of uses to be incorporated in, fair market ground rent to the city. We have an economic interest, exceptional architecture, consistency with Bergamot area, and the loose plans. So when we reference exclusive negotiating agreement, that is really acknowledging that we've selected a development team and we're in the period of time of approximately 12 months to negotiate the terms of development. And while that process is going on, there's still extensive community outreach in a community process that develops that plan. So it's a concept at this stage, refinement there during the E&A process, and then they have the development agreement and the entitlement process where there's continued community feedback. And just wanted to emphasize that this is not the only time for feedback and direction. And ultimately a final design that's adopted by council and ultimately permitted. And this process takes several years, and we haven't even begun that. And again, just highlighting what is on the bottom of the agenda. The link above is where all the proposal information's available, and then similarly our email address where you can submit additional comments, questions, and continued feedback. So with that, I'd like to introduce Greg Reitz of Rethink Core, who's first up. And where is Greg? I think his team's coming on. And again, we're going to have a kind of a free-flowing, so pardon our transition between teams, and then ultimately we have the gallery tenants of Bill Turner.
Actually, if anyone has an empty chair next to you, can you raise your hand and there's a table stand in the back row? So if anyone needs seats, know where the hands are? Okay, and then back through here. Okay, thank you.
My name is Greg Reitz. I'm with Rethink Development, one of the teams that proposed. We've been given 15 minutes to go through what amounts to about 300 pages of proposals, so we're going to do our best, but also rely on your questions so that we can answer them and get to what you really care about. The Bergamot RFP was very complex, and what exists here is something that's very special. So it took a very diverse team and mix of skills that we put together in order to address what is uniquely Bergamot and what Bergamot wants to become. So I said my name is Greg Reitz with Rethink Development. Rethink Development grew essentially out of the city of Santa Monica. I used to be the green building advisor for the city and worked at City Yards for a year and spent about every day here eating lunch while I was there. We have managed the process of the proposal in conjunction with the rest of the team. The core group, Westport Capital Partners, Eric Clapp, will let him introduce himself real quickly.
Hi, thanks, Greg. I'm with Westport Capital Partners. Just wanted to introduce ourselves. We're the financial partner and equity partner in the project involved here. We manage just over $1.5 billion in equity committed to real estate investments and have significant experience in creative office and hospitality as well. And this would actually be the second project that we do with Rethink and Core, as we've just recently completed entitlements and are pushing forward with a mixed-use project up in Santa Barbara.
And then if I jump to the bottom of the slide there, that's our cultural team. You see, Lord Cultural Resources is an international arts organization consulting firm. They work with museums and arts organizations to help them meet their mission. Mary Norris is our Art Center manager. She's in the audience here tonight. And you can't see on the right-hand side Imprint Projects. That is a communication specialist that focuses on arts organizations and getting their message out. As I mentioned, it's a very challenging project, and we have a very diverse design team, and we have some of the members of that team here tonight. Brian, why don't you?
Hi, I'm Brian DeLoe. I'm with the Core Group. We're the lead developer for the project, and we're also the operator of the hotel component of the project. I've called LA home most of my life. I've lived in Santa Monica since 2006, and our office, our headquarters, is right down the street in Venice. Core is an integrated real estate investment and development and management company, and we've acquired and developed properties throughout the U.S. and internationally valued in excess of $2 billion. Most of what we've done has been infill projects in urban areas, just like Bergamot. Many of you may know Core through what we've done in Santa Monica. We opened our first Viceroy Hotel on Ocean Avenue down the street, and we also did the Delfina Hotel on Pico. We sold our interest in Viceroy Hotel Group a couple years ago, and we've been spending most of the last 2 years developing a new concept for hospitality. We looked at the market and we looked at our competition, and we really gravitated toward two main ideas: the idea of the rise of the creative class, people like us, and the lack of hotels that really cater toward that audience. So this hotel, our hotel, is a part of the larger Bergamot development in our proposal. Will probably end up being the 5th hotel that's part of this new brand that we've created. The first hotel is well underway, under development in San Francisco. We have a project in downtown LA that we're soon starting construction on, and we have projects in Austin, Texas, and in New York that will be forthcoming. Our hotel here and our hotels in general are mid-price lifestyle boutique hotels, somewhat very similar to other boutique hotels of that sort. They have thoughtful design and high-energy public spaces, unique food and beverage offerings, and personalized services. But it's not just that. What we're creating is something that's more than that. It's all about the community, and it's about active participation within it. So these hotels are intended to be hubs for culture, both within the building and outside of our building. There will be the living rooms of the community and places for locals and visitors alike to travel to and to interact with each other. One of the unique ways that we intend to do that as part of this project is something that we included in our proposal, which is Club Bergamot. The Bergamot Club functions like a private club, and its members will be members that are tied to Bergamot, whether because we work here, because we look at and buy art here, or because we're members of the greater LA art community. What's great is that with Bergamot Club, a significant portion of all of the profits, so a significant portion of revenue from Bergamot Club goes toward cultural programming. So that means rents can be kept low. It means that we won't be forced by economics to bring in retailers or office tenants that may impact the unique vibe and feel of Bergamot today. Another way that our hotel is different is through our financial partnership that we have with a company called Fundrise, which we included in our proposal. Fundrise is a crowdfunding platform, and what that means is that everyone within our community will be given an opportunity to invest in this hotel as part of Bergamot and actually be a partner of ours in the project.
So, how does one preserve the fragile ecosystem that already exists here and make sure that Bergamot Station Art Center remains a cultural destination for the next 55 years, which is the length of the lease, and beyond? We felt the best way was to focus in on the essence of what Bergamot is and create a mission statement that supported that. And I think what's important about it is what it says, but also what it doesn't say. So Bergamot Station Art Center is the premier destination in Los Angeles to discover, experience, and contemplate the best of today's art and culture. And so that may evolve with more input from the community and the tenants here. Okay. That may evolve with more input from all of you, but it's our stake in the ground, and it's what we need to create in order to ensure that Bergamot thrives for the next 55 years, because the arts are continually evolving, and we need a sounding board upon which to make sure that Bergamot remains something that is the premier destination. What it also says is it's not the place to create art. We have 18th Street Art Center down the road. That's the place where great art is created. Here is for all of us to come and enjoy art, to buy art, and to be inspired by the art that's here. Once you have this mission, you need someone to entrust with it. And what we thought the best way to ensure the longevity and the evolution of Bergamot is with a board of directors in a nonprofit organization. So not just one person that, whatever their vision is, goes and creates it, but people that are in the arts community, that reach out in the arts community and bring back new ideas, and make sure that Bergamot remains something that we can all be proud of over many, many years. The other thing that we looked at was the community process, which the community was engaged for 2 years in creating what the vision for the evolution of Bergamot would be, and what came out of that was option A. And we compared our proposal to option A and tried to improve upon what came out of that process, but we're very aware of what came out of it. We also, since the proposals have come out, we ranked all of the objective criteria that were listed in them against our competitors. And I want to point out the one thing where I think we appear to have come up short, and that is in the contribution to the museum. And the reason we did that was we kind of took an opposite approach to what was in the RFP, and in consultation with Lord Cultural Resources, who works with lots of museums. And they said, it's very difficult for an arts organization to raise money for operations. It's much easier to do it for a capital campaign or to build a building. And so what we've done is we've made a contribution, about 10% of the budget for the construction of it, to the museum, and made their rent zero to ensure that they will thrive and survive well into the future with no overhead. Some of the other proposals have asked them to pay $384,000 a year in rent. We feel like this is a much more sustainable model. However, if the community feels it's important to provide more capital to the museum, we can reduce our lease, our ground lease to the city, and in fact keep that the highest among the competition and still turn that box to green. Finally, the fragile ecosystem that exists here is made up of tenants. They're mostly galleries, and if we disturb them too much, they will leave, and we won't have Bergamot as we know it today. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about tenant retention. And very quickly, we have a phased construction plan to minimize impact on the tenants, and then a large budget to put towards tenant retention, which includes things like free valet for people that come to visit. We will rent off-site parking so there's a place to put the cars, rent abatement if that is something that the tenants feel they need in order to survive the construction period. Now I'll turn it over to David.
I can do that. Hi, my name is David Hertz. I'm an architect, and this is Michael Maltz. And this project is unique in that rather than being hired by a development team, I saw the RFP, looked at it as a design project, something I've always loved about Bergamot, and together worked to put a development team together, and then work collaboratively to bring the best talents through landscape design and other architecture so that we can create a vital ecology of different buildings, like a city. I mean, I think one of the things that Greg mentioned that was very, very clear is that the community spoke very loudly that we don't want to disturb Bergamot and ruin what Bergamot is. We have taken that as saying we've kept all of the buildings. We've proposed to take half of one building and repurpose that with its material into another building. And by doing this in our scheme, and this is perhaps what differs, is that we're then able to really work within the open space. Our scheme creates 2.6 acres of enhanced space. It's over 118,000 feet. We're working within all of the existing buildings. We love the character of the existing buildings. We want to enhance the performance of those buildings, but we want to create an urban park. We want to create something that's like the High Line on the ground, an event space, a cultural space, a space where you could eat lunch, where galleries could work, as part of the cultural hub and center of Santa Monica and the future of Santa Monica. And what we've done is we've inserted some buildings within the negative space of what exists, and therefore we're not as concerned about the disruption that takes in tearing down the buildings. We first started with a parking and multimodal hub. The idea of creating parking off-site turns essentially a giant parking lot into a park. The concept of placing this works within the master plan of the city yards. However, we've also proposed a scheme that looks at a long linear building that sits on top of the existing building so that the timing can work better between the projects. You can see our buildings and how they're inserted: creative offices, incubator galleries, hotel, and of course the museum. What we decided, and where you'll see our scheme is different, is that we decided to put the hotel and the restaurant at the epicenter of the project. One of the problems that we see with Bergamot now is that it's not porous to the community. We have a new, engaging part of the community. We want it to be porous so that people can walk in. We have this wonderful first stop of the expo line, and as we have back here, we proposed a bus stop, and here we have this wonderful opportunity to really engage both bike stations, 2 bike stations we have, pedestrian friendly. We have access for loading under a timed way like the promenade with bollards. But the hotel being in the middle, rather than say at the edge, terraces the project up. Doesn't put a giant wall on the western edge of the property, which creates a 6-story building and then blocks Bergamot. The idea is, let's bring it in the center. The other concern that we had was, if we have a hotel at one edge, what happens to the dark hole in the vast middle when it's not active, say at night? And so forth. We felt, let's create a vital, energized core that's 24/7 activity, where the lobby is essentially like a gallery, where there's restaurants and cafes, and where there's a relationship between the cultural elements and the galleries, and that will invigorate the middle. It also allows us, in an alternative scheme, if an off-site parking is not provided, to do a deeper, centralized underground parking rather than a long, shallow parking, and that way we're able to preserve buildings.
We have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Our creative offices are on the hub, and now I'll turn it over to Michael for the museum.
Thanks, David. Michael Maltz, along with David, one of the architects responsible for the design of the project. We've been primarily focused on the additional cultural components of the overall plan, striving to create a broader mix of informal as well as formal spaces. And those include, is it the green? Oh, thanks. Those include this garden, a kind of trellis or armature outdoor common space for both impromptu as well as programmed installations and events, 99-seat black box theater, and the new museum at the heart of the overall campus. Importantly, we have looked at putting the museum in concert with the theater right at that center point, which is a confluence of both transit with the Expo line and potential pedestrian access with crosswalks across Olympic. That center point puts some of the most dynamic parts of the programming right at the center of the overall project. The museum, which is at the center, is really a confluence of both this more open common space as well as the more closed and internal theater, with closed and for conservation protected galleries up above. You can see the museum in this right-hand image, as well as a great deal of transparent, open, glass-enclosed space on the ground floor. The goal here is that even the passerby on the train has some connection, some strong sense of the dynamic programming that's going on within the museum. This one next. Thanks.
So we need to conclude because there are two other teams. I'm sorry, one thing I wanted to interject, this right there who's standing in the front has comment cards. So when people have questions, which we're going to take Q&A at the end of the three proposals, and we'll have an hour, please fill them out. We'll also have an opportunity to queue up for the mic. So if you guys have any ones, and then we need to move on.
We'll wrap it. We want to let you know that we have a full animation of the project right in the front. We encourage you to look at that. And in conclusion, we looked at the highest budget provided for arts management. This is an arts project. It's not a retail project. Only non-for-profit art center, all local community integration, a black box theater, zero rent for the museum. They have 3 years to capital campaign, easier to raise rent, raise money for a building than rent. Fewest number of galleries are relocated and disturbed. Highest level of sustainability, highest ground rent that goes to our public transportation, investment alternative transit infrastructure, open space by far, zero retail, and the greatest number of existing buildings preserved, and a real concern for maintaining the character of tenants. So thank you very much.
So thank you to Greg and the Rethink Core team. We now are going to invite 26th Street TOD to come up to the podium for their presentation.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for having us tonight. My name is Scott Ginsberg. I'm a partner in 26th Street TOD Partners, along with Jim Jacobson here and Lou Wolf, who wasn't able to join us tonight. We've been working on this for quite a long time, and we've enjoyed the process to date, so we're really excited about the opportunity to show our project off to the community at large. This has been a great project to work on, and one where we've brought together a very strong team together. So we're excited to be able to show it to you, although that's not it.
My apologies, I'm trying to get it to fit.
That's okay. So we'll get there in a minute. First of all, we'd like to thank the City of Santa Monica for sponsoring this event tonight. We'd also like to thank the city's staff for their work to date on this and recommending our project to the City Council. We look forward to working on this project with the City Council and the community at large once the recommendation has been ratified. I'd like to start by introducing our full team. Some of our team members are here today, some are not. As I said, my name is Scott Ginsberg, Jim Jacobson, and Lou Wolf. We're partners in 26th Street TOD. This is Mark Rios and Mark Motonaga from Rios Clemente Hale. They're our design team on this project. We're also joined in our project by the Lionstone Group. The Lionstone Group is a private equity real estate fund out of Houston, although they own about 1 million square feet in Santa Monica, have been a significant investor here for many years, including ownership of 2415, which is directly next door to this building, part of the privately owned parcels. So we look forward to being able to consider that as part of the greater Bergamot Station project in the future. We're also joined by a couple locals, Mark and Paul Attanasio. Mark Pally and Carol Goldstein have helped us envision how the art will work and how the Bergamot Station Art Center Foundation will work to make sure that the art is sustained here at Bergamot Station. The Carey Group and Greer Daly have helped us with outreach. Ced Moses has helped us think through a lot of programming. You may recognize his name. His father is a prolific artist who's shown at Bergamot Station for many, many years. And lastly, we've been joined by W.E. O'Neill, which is a construction company, and that's important because they've helped us make our numbers real. When we've looked at this and we've pro forma'd it, we've made sure that we can implement a project. So we've gone through this at length with our construction company, and we've made sure that our numbers are real. So, as you can tell, we've worked very hard to bring a set of best-in-class individuals together. And we're excited to continue working together on this, implementing this project. When we started this, we set out to accomplish a set of very finite goals. One, we wanted to build connections. We thought it was important to build connections with the history of Bergamot Station, with the future uses of Bergamot Station, with other parts of Los Angeles. There is a train coming. The expo is coming. There will be a station right here. So being able to connect the city, the greater city at large, arts center, community, educational places to Bergamot Station was very important to us as we evolved our plan and thought about it. We really wanted to create an authentic place, an organic place. We want to elevate the design for the project. Thirdly, we want to ensure sustainability. And when we say sustainability, we won't just mean the physical aspects of the project. We have solar arrays, we do a lot of water retention. We're shooting for a LEED Silver project, which is fundamentally important as we see climate change and all these reports in the news today. But really what we want to make sure is we're providing for a sustainable art and culture place. A place where it's funded, where there are people creating art, and people and families and community members can come and see art constantly. Lastly, we really wanted to present a project that was real. We wanted to be able to implement our project immediately because we see the train coming, and we responded to an RFP where the city asked us to present something that we could build, and we're very excited about building that project. Our team was guided by what the project could be for the community and the city. I want to summarize our community benefits, and you'll have to excuse me, we don't have a lot of slides because we were limited to 3 slides tonight, so we want to show our project as a whole, but let me just walk through our community benefits. We have over 70,000 square feet of dedicated open space, and Mark will go into that a little bit in more detail. We provide a home to existing Bergamot tenants, including the art galleries and a new Santa Monica Museum of Art. We connect pedestrian walkways and bike paths through the project. We ensure economic viability of the arts through financial subsidies and endowments to the arts and culture programs. We enhance public transportation interchanges. We add amenities for public performances. We have a beautiful public open amphitheater, which we're very excited about. We provide a place where art and culture can intersect. We have what we're programming and we've called a culture lab. And lastly, we're providing, as all the teams are, 75,000 square feet of subsidized space for arts and culture at the project. Our project was designed to honor the rich history of the site, provide a distinctive design, and ensure a lasting and sustainable project which will economically benefit the city and the community. Our intention is to create a unique environment for the community members and visitors to Santa Monica. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Jacobson, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the intricacies of our project. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. Mark Rios is going to step up next.
Hi, I'm Mark Rios, Rios Clemente Health Studios, and I'm joined with Mark Motenaga. And we've been working and thinking and really being inspired on this project for the last year. And we really look forward to the real design work beginning for the next couple of years, because up to date, all the teams have been working with conversations with all of you, but in a fairly insulated manner. And we've been making decisions based on our values of the project, about preservation, about community, about connections, about what the architecture should be about. But the interactive, collaborative process that makes the real design is yet to come. And so we really look forward to that. You'll see different solutions from different teams based on exactly how many buildings they preserve and how the parking is handled. And those two key things are really going to shape the design of the project. We took the requirements really literally. We parked all the parking on our site. And to do that, we went underground. We didn't want to have a big above-ground parking structure, which would be very massive and likely remove a lot of buildings. So we went underground. We've kept 75% of the buildings. And as the project evolves and partnership happens with the city, other thinking about parking may happen. It also may happen in order to facilitate phasing and to keep all the galleries operational during the project. And so as those conversations happen, design will also evolve. And so our design was based on our belief that we wanted to solve all the problems on our property. And that we're hoping that collaboration and big thinking will let that design flourish and grow. Some of you may know the work of our studio, and what I'm most proud of is that all the work is about telling the story of a place. And this place is amazing, and that's why we're so excited about it. And so we've really looked at Bergamot as the inspiration for the design, and seeing it as having two unique ideas that can really inspire this new place. And basically the galleries, the spaces that they're in now, the industrial quality of it, which that image is about, is really what the architecture and the feeling and the composition of this place is about. But we're getting this new influx of people and how the transportation system is now linking into Bergamot. And so we've really looked at a lot of the really great train stations that are industrial, that have big open spaces, that create places for people to come together. And we're looking at how those two ideas might fuse together and create a new set of architectural spaces for Bergamot. So Mark, maybe you can walk through a little bit of the project and how it's organized.
Thank you. And thanks for having us this evening. You know, it's one of these rare occasions where we as architects actually get to think a little further down the line, at the same time really engage in a public discourse about the future of a big part of a city and its cultural sort of growth. So our project really, as Mark was saying, is based on the blending of the industrial nature of the existing warehouse typology with the new train station. And what we wanted to do was really take the exit off the platform and really connect it through a garden concourse that was trellis covered and led you to a main plaza where the amphitheater was. By doing that, we were able to bring the performance space further away from the noise of Olympic, as well as start to create a way to shift the building and create an orientation that is good for sustainable systems. The other thing we wanted to do was to really sort of allow all of the new building fabric to actually engage the ground. We wanted every tenant to have a front door on public space. That way, we enliven every outdoor space that we create and not push people up without having that connection. We also were very interested in trying to understand this sort of real inspiration of what Bergamot has become and try to translate that into something new and sort of evolve it. So what we really wanted to do was sort of try to maintain some of the fabric of the existing Bergamot in a really creative way by really trying to reorganize it through connections. So we have the continuation of the art walk from a Genesis coming in, ending at the new museum, similarly located at the middle of the site so that it becomes sort of the center focal point and anchor to the site. And what we did do was we pushed our hotel to 26th Street to try to keep the hotel away from becoming the center, but rather keep the arts as the center focal point. What we did do, however, is we created a limited service hotel idea, which means that we do not have restaurants or amenities for food and beverage in the hotel, but rather are using our tenants as a means to bring people from the hotel down into Bergamot Station. So this effort was sort of a way that we saw, rather than putting a mass here, to really shift it, keep it out of the way, but allow the program to bleed and really sort of help enliven the space. We also realized that Bergamot operates sort of as a late morning to early evening and into the night kind of system of time and events, and that a place really needed to be allowed for these kinds of events to transition through the night. So by having the hotel off to the side really provided that opportunity so that those activities could really become what we know as Bergamot. We also been working with tenants to sort of realize some potential ways of phasing the project so that we can actually address some of the concerns of maintaining this sort of fragile ecosystem that we've been talking about. And I think that's really important because I don't think that we also have all the answers to how we might help during the construction process. So we are looking for input, and we would like to keep working with the tenants to figure that out. So this is an image of the main plaza with the amphitheater that it fronts on, and you can see the garden concourse we envision with a vine planting, and really sort of the landscape was meant to sort of feel like a post-industrial kind of landscape where the plant material really starts to take over. We really felt also integrating exterior moments for programming of art was very important for the galleries, that they could use periodically, and as well as have different shows of different outside artists. We also thought it was very important that each outdoor space have a tenant that provided food and beverage, so they are also strewn throughout the site to help activity and happen in every space, not just in one singular place. This diagram here shows how we have sort of stitched together the site's open space. The green represents all of the dedicated open space. There are no sort of shared parking and open space conditions. It is purely pedestrian and bike oriented. And finally, you can see the view from the platform at 26th and Olympic, looking east through the garden concourse here, and the corner condition with a restaurant and a mezzanine for the restaurant overlooking Sunset Mini Park Plaza.
Hi, my name is Jim Jacobson. I've been working in this area since really I graduated from UCLA in 1990. We kind of came up with the term creative space, which is kind of what we're all sitting in, and have been a member of the community for that duration. I kind of want to leave the departure of the presentation for a second and say, you guys are all here as stakeholders. We've spent a lot of time with the other stakeholders. They're the tenants that are here and the galleries. And you guys are entrusting everyone that's kind of standing before you to really go through the process and really involve the community. And we really take that part of it really seriously. We know we have a long way to go, and these are really abstract ideas that we kind of put our best foot forward. But we're really looking sincerely for the next, long duration, probably a couple of years, to really have multiple meetings that are kind of this kind of a format, and really take the public comment and really try to work those into the fabric of what the community desires and what's going to kind of take place. And for the last, I don't know, 3 months, if you can kind of ask your neighbor that's someone that's on site, we kind of started with the art galleries and have spent a tremendous amount of time with the museum. And I think it's also important to kind of note that our project really focused as you get off the train, the anchor tenant is the museum. And in that kind of moment, we chose to fund that very heavily and make sure that that was going to be built and operational. The next kind of piece was to actually start talking to the tenants we wanted to have, just more than placeholder, but get their input. And we reached out to people that are kind of already in the community, like KCRW. The idea, which some people have had a little bit of pro and con to, was CalArts, but it's not CalArts the campus, it's CalArts the Cultural and Media Lab. And so the idea behind that was to actually have a place for people to come within the community, meet, and actually experience some of the fantastic things that are happening in Santa Monica. In addition to that, we also really looked at having an ongoing budget that would be supplementing and furthering the arts programming in perpetuity. So if you read our proposal, it designates that we're going to fund that with $200,000 the first year, and then every year climbing after that a couple of $100,000. And the idea was to really tie that budget and that restriction and put that on us, that we were really going to have an ongoing, flourishing management program. And how are we doing on time? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Let us talk.
Now we're going to have the Bergamot Limited Jeff Worth Development team with his partners.
Joe, you guys are going to use this mic.
Oh, I guess, you're there, I guess sit here then. Okay. Why don't we go ahead and start to preserve everybody's time while we're getting the slide up. I believe we brought just one or two slides. My name's Jeff Worth. This is Matt Lavin. We work together at Worth Real Estate Group. Joel is back there. Joe Coriati, Fred Fisher with Fred Fisher and Partners. Thanks. This is our slide. So I think we could show you a lot of fancy renderings and pictures, but this is not where we think this project is today. This is about who you as a community want to marry up with to try to move this thing forward, because we have not had a real community process other than the process that we attended getting up to the place of the RFP. And I think to sum up our proposal is really preserve. And you know, the architects will use fancier words than we do, like preserve the DNA and the ecosystem here, but we're actually here to preserve the businesses, the existing tenants in this project. And it comes for a variety of reasons, not the least of which my wife worked here, and she's got a lot of vote in our house. But it's impossible to talk about preserving buildings if you're going to modify those buildings so that the tenants have to leave. So when we talk about preserving a building, our goal, which we actually heard from the community process, was that every single business stays open while this project gets redeveloped. We preserve and maintain the majority of the existing buildings, and those that have to be impacted, which is a portion of Building A. We build Building C before we take the portion of Building A down, so those people move right over. The other is Building T, which is where the hotel goes to. We've called the hotel in our project as Phase 2. Why? Because we're not sure exactly when that hotel gets built in this plan. It's all about demand. We'll build it as soon as it's ready. We don't know when it's ready. If it's ready today or ready 3 or 5 years from now, we just don't know. So we call that Phase 2. I think, as I mentioned, it's all about the process that we need to take on going forward once the city selects a group to team up with. And I think that I'd like maybe Fred or Joe to speak a little about their experience in Santa Monica with community process, also maybe speak a little bit to some of your experience, so obviously from day one with this project, here, where we are, museums in general, because the museum's a big part of this project. But maybe you can speak a little bit, Fred, about that.
Okay.
Just do it there.
Thank you, Jeff. There is a lot of talk about the DNA of this project, and when I look at the material that was handed out here, there's a discussion of the soul of Bergamot and the DNA and the fragile ecosystem. Well, Joe and I were here 20 years ago, standing in these empty buildings with literally tumbleweeds blowing through and pigeons living in them with Wayne Blank, and we helped create what is the soul of Bergamot. And we worked with Rosamund Felsen, Patty Four, Peter Fetterman, Frank Lloyd, and others doing half a dozen of the galleries that are here. You may know some of our other projects in this area, the Annenberg Community Beach House. We worked on Tongva Park. We know quite a bit about community engagement in this community. We've been here for more than 30 years. Joe's going to talk about that. Museum work, our plan shows the museum as the signature and the gateway to this project. Our plan is based on a large open space in the center of the project. This project, in the last 20 years, as those of you who have frequented it know, it's a vital ecosystem right now of events, both external and internal, that take place. They need a big central space that's fed from all sides. Those of you who know PS1 Contemporary Arts Center in New York know how that entry courtyard space works. It's a framed device where all kinds of activities take place. It works when it's empty, and it works when it's full of thousands of people. The project objectives: preservation, open space, consistency, and exceptional architecture. Those are the things which we intend to address. The preservation work in these buildings, we're the authors originally. You can count on us preserving them. As Jeff said, preserving the owners as well. You know the Broad Foundation preservation work, the PS1 Contemporary Arts Center, half a dozen museums across the country. We take what we call a 360-degree view of the art world. We work with artist collaborations, art galleries, museums, art education institutions, and this is the core of what we do. And we're in this project as longtime members of the community, as authors, and as people that are invested in those of you who have been here for the last 20 years and come on. And we partnered with Jeff and Matt because we know them as also committed members of the community. Joe, why don't you talk to us a bit about the community engagement?
Well, he walks over there to get your mic. The only people who like to talk more than architects are architects. Go ahead, Joe.
So one of the subjects that Jennifer and Jason asked us to talk about today was the community engagement process. And we know how important that is. I've talked to a number of people here tonight, and people are questioning the scale of the project. How do we maintain the goals that were established through community meeting, the city input, and a wide group of constituency? One of the things that we've had great success at, the Annenberg Community Beach House, and participating in the early stages in Tongva Park, is how do we build community consensus? And I wanted to talk a little bit about that, and specifically how we would do that. What we did in both of those projects, and I think we would do here, is have community meetings actually on the site to discuss what really are the right functions to have at Bergamot. We know from community input, Art Center is critical. Retention of the buildings is critical. Jeff talked about retention of the businesses, exploration to figure out how it could become even more part of the community in supporting arts, not only on site, but regionally. So we thought about having a set of tents. We're going to be working with CARS, who has been working with the city a long time to help to orchestrate that process, but to go through and have a series of events where we hear and get everybody's input, go through another series of events to refine some of those strategies, come back with design ideas, and then eventually maybe having a final event, getting to a point where we can build consensus. When we originally looked at Annenberg, we had a lot of different ideas, and they were narrowed down. Tongva Park, a very similar scenario. We think that would be really appropriate here, and getting to a point where we understand what is the right location, does a hotel really work? where is the right space for, the right spot for some of the retail. We are pretty committed to the location of the museum. What is the driver of the creative workspace? How does it relate to what's next door? How does it generate income for the city? Because that is a very real part of this project as well. And like Jeff said, and some others have mentioned, then eventually to really get into the architecture, we would suggest that you go through and look at the proposals. We have pretty developed drawings, but I think that community input and then how that eventually that relates to our strategy for the arts management plan.
So I think there was the top three goals that were shown by staff originally. The first was affordable cultural arts. The rents we proposed in our package are 20% lower than the other teams, so we took that to heart. Second was open space. We have 130,000 feet of open space. At one point characterized as less because we have 27 parking stalls on the site. Why? Because we know from these galleries you have to have some parking outside of these buildings or people can't take pieces in and out, and that's why that's there. But it's 130,000 feet of open space. And the third goal was preservation of the existing buildings, and we think it's bigger than that. And that's really, I think, what people need to decide. We don't want to save buildings and change the insides of them. We don't want to save the outsides of the building. We want to save the insides of the businesses that are there. And if that's not what people want, that's fine. But that's what we're here to propose. To keep the project that's here today and move it forward by spending money on the buildings, because some of them need them, and to make this thing a better version of what it is today, not a different version of what it is today. I think another key point is the retail. Somebody mentioned it in one of the other teams. Restaurant and retail, in our proposal, counts for 7,000 square feet. Another proposal, it's 13, and the third proposal, it's 37,000 feet. We're not doing one of those projects. We're not taking the existing retail to 37,000 square feet because it's not what we're looking to do here. I think the history that this team has with this project is important. I think they know. Listen, there's a lot of people who got up and said how much they like this place. So we thought maybe that means something. Let's keep it the way it is, and let's make it better, but let's not try and change it to a point that you don't recognize it tomorrow. So I think you've got a great collection, through a lot of hard work for a lot of people, a great collection of businesses in this location, and we think they should stay. So our entire goal here was to formulate a plan to keep them all open and operating, including the museum. Museum gets built first, they move out, then we have a path of getting these new buildings built and keeping everybody open. You guys have anything else you want to say? I think the end of this for us is, I think this is not for our opinion, it's not a time to be picking a color or rendering or an image. It's about a team with a direction of where they want to go. I think you got qualified teams. All three of them are. This is about which team do you think wants to take this in the direction that you guys want to go. And whatever that decision is, we applaud it. I live here. So I'll be part of this whichever way it goes. But it's for you to decide which direction you want this project to go. And hopefully we made it clear which way we'd like to take it. Thanks for your time.
So thank you for Jeff Worth and his team for bringing us back to schedule. Mr. Turner, Bill Turner, let's introduce, representing the Gallery Tenant Association here. So Bill, you need to speak right into the microphone.
I like to move around. Thank you, Jason, very much. And I want to start out just by, I'm William Turner. I'm the spokesperson for the Bergamot Station Gallery and Cultural Association, which was formed after the City Council voted unanimously to delay selection of a development team so that they could get feedback from the stakeholders here, which we hadn't had an opportunity to give, and also from members of the community. So tonight is a part of a process that we've been engaging in for the last several months. And I just want to thank the Santa Monica departments from the city in helping facilitate this dialogue, not only with the developers, but with the city themselves. Jennifer Taylor, Jason Harris, you've both been very helpful in setting that up. I think you've heard from each of the teams, and we've also heard from each of the city council members how important we all feel that it is to get this right. And there's a lot of passion about the value that Bergamot Station, as it exists today and has developed over the last 20 years, brings to the community. We've talked about it as a fragile ecosystem. But what does that really mean? Well, the fragility of this is, first of all, based in part on the nature of galleries. It's very unusual for this many galleries to have come and stayed in one place. Why are we typically not that way? Part of it is the nature of our business is very difficult and subject to economic vagaries. We're always looking for cheaper rent and bigger spaces. That's why, and it's not just unique to Santa Monica or Los Angeles. You see this same sort of migration happen in all cities around the United States. So what's been achieved here is really unique and very special. Just to cite one example, there's actually a phrase called the Soho effect, where artists and galleries moved to Soho. That led the development of other aspects of Soho. Restaurants moved in, other retail establishments, clothing shops, furniture shops moved in. The rents went up. And over time, the rents got so high that the galleries and the artists began looking for other places that they could afford, and so they started to move. Where did they move? They moved to Chelsea, they moved to Tribeca. That migration continues as kind of a cycle. So it's really special what's happened here. That hasn't happened here. For 20 years, you've had a core of galleries and businesses that have thrived in a very unlikely area. Next to the city dump, you go past an auto body shop and a homeless shelter, which I personally applaud and support. But that's where we are, not the beach by the Santa Monica Bay that we all imagine when we think of palm trees in Santa Monica. So this is something quite unique. What's fragile about it? What's fragile about it is what has made this successful. We've had very stabilized rents for 20 years. That is something that continues as a factor. All of the developers, by the way, I want to thank all the development teams that we've been meeting with. We get their passion, their creativity. They've all got unique solutions. Some parts of ones we like better than some parts of others, and so on. But combined, there is a lot of really great, we applaud their ingenuity and their passion for this project. What we're here to tell you about is some of the factors that really need to be considered as this project develops. Probably key and foremost is just to think in terms of a fragile ecosystem like a coral reef. What's unique about that reef that allows it to develop in one place and not in another place? Why is a coral reef kind of unique and fragile? Why is Bergamot not unique and fragile? One of the reasons is that unlike almost anywhere else you can think of in Los Angeles, people can come here and park for free and walk around and see 30 excellent galleries, the museum, and other cultural destinations like where we are right now. And I want to thank Jeff Gordon throughout this process has generously availed us of his virtual theater here, where he does many different, this is one of the kinds of uses that Jeff puts his space to, but he does seminars and plays and community workshops. So this is unique to Bergamot Station, and you get here for free, you can park, you can stay as long as you want. And that has been something very unique that has drawn charities to want to come to us and do their charitable events here, because the cost of having a valet is not a factor for them like it would be in other parts of the city. Political fundraisers, same thing. There's an ease of access. So Bergamot has really become kind of a town square, a public forum where we can all share in the many multiple cultural assets that Santa Monica has. What's unique also about Bergamot is there's no other place like that in Santa Monica. If we moved from here, there is nowhere else in Santa Monica we could move. So when we think about the development that's being proposed, the RFP, the request for proposals, one of the key things that every tenant here has commented on is whether the scope and scale of development is in proportion to the capacity of the site. What do I mean by that? Currently, the section that we're talking about developing, which is kind of called Bergamot 1, has just under 55,000 square feet of space that's occupied now, building space. Each of the proposals talks about a almost five-fold increase of that space, so that you would get to 220,000 square feet of building space. Right now it's 55,000, then it's going to be 220,000. That's just what you're going to add to the site. On top of that, we're putting a train station here. That's coming before we even get to which proposal is going to be chosen. The trains are coming. They're building it right now. And one of the advantages of having that in advance is we've seen, just with that limited development, the real impact that that has had on our businesses, on ease of parking. So if you come to Bergamot any time during the day, other than a Saturday, when there is a little more parking, but any time during the day, we're at capacity. It's hard to find parking every day. So and that's with 55,000 square feet of current use. If you add in the station, just the ridership, let alone any other development, by estimates from the city, they're going to get a ridership of somewhere between 35 and 40,000 people a day on that train, which they estimate about 10% of those will get off at this stop. I don't know about you, but I know when I go to the Bay Area and I take BART and so on, one of the great advantages of BART is you can go and park your car in Oakland and go into the city and do whatever you're going to do and come back, get in your car and go home. And it works like that at most mass transit spaces. What hasn't yet been contemplated for Bergamot, putting the train station here, is to add any parking, not one space, for the ridership. So one of the key threshold issues for us is to really say what makes this fragile is the parking capacity, because that's what's made this successful. So if you do development that is beyond the capacity for the site to absorb, you risk losing that site. Now, what has the city proposed in the RFP? They've proposed to each of the developers to do underground parking. Underground parking from what's here right now. And each of them has creative ways to do that underground parking, but having seen the disruption of just building a train platform sort of not really on the site and what that's done to disrupt, whatever strategy you have, it concerns us greatly that putting underground parking on the site will create a lot of disruption for people working on the site and clients coming to the site. Where do you park while that's being built? Is there adjacent parking next door? Not really. There is the water garden. I know Robert Berman and I used to do events here when we were running the LA International, and we worked with Cultural Affairs from Santa Monica to handle overflow parking. In the old days when we had 350 spaces, now it's about 300 because of the station incursion. And we rented what is now that park on the corner of Cloverfield and Pico. That used to handle about 500 cars. We would rent that from the city. We'd have shuttle buses. We would rent spaces from the water garden. We'd have shuttle buses there. It worked when we had a specific event, but it was an imperfect solution and certainly not something that would work on a kind of a daily basis for drawing people here for the ease of use. It would contradict that very factor that has made Bergamot Station so successful. So we're concerned about underground parking. Just the nature of constructing it seems to us a very real threat to our business viability during the construction, let alone where do you end up afterwards? Well, if you look at the proposals, the most parking that you end up with under the proposals is 440 spaces. Right now we have 300. So you're going to go through all that pain to get a net benefit of 140 spaces. But you're going to also have 3,500 people a day coming to the site. You're going to have a hotel. You're going to have a double the size museum that is now, instead of being somewhat off the site we're talking about, will be moved from where it is now onto the site, displacing a lot of the parking that's there. And you'll have quite a lot of square footage of other retail or creative office spaces that'll be added to Bergamot. So we're very concerned about what that stress on this site, which already is at capacity of parking, will do.
Bill, we have just a couple more statements because I know a lot of people have questions.
I know there's a theory out there that if you don't build it, they'll figure out other ways to get here and be creative. Here's the reality that I see. For most of the people who live on the west side, many of our clients, by the way, live on the west side, the Expo line is only interesting to go downtown. You go to Staples Center, you go to Dodger game, you go to all the stuff that you oftentimes don't feel like driving to because of the traffic. Now you can go. But if you don't live right near, like walking or biking distance, if you're north of Montana or Marina del Rey or Venice, how are you going to get there? Well, you could ride your bike on a date with your kids and come back from Staples Center or a Dodger game at 11 o'clock at night and then get on your bike and ride home at night. But I don't think that's most of the people in this audience. So we're concerned about the fact of forcing people into other modes of transportation. I just don't see that that's the lifestyle or the kind of behavior of most people who use Bergamot Station now. It would be fantastic. I'd love to be Amsterdam where we bike everywhere, but that has a lot of other infrastructure that's been built around it. So we think adjacent parking is the first thing that needs to be done, no matter what other development is proposed. And all we would say is go slow. Remember, this is a fragile patient. You don't want to do open heart surgery and brain surgery and a kidney transplant and a nose job at the same time. You do one, okay, that's successful, he survived. Let's consider the next one. Can we do the brain surgery? His heart seems to be okay. Okay. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. So we're now transitioning into the question and answer session. We're going to ask the three development teams to have a representative come up and join, because I think in the ability to respond, I can imagine the questions will probably be posed broadly in relation to all the teams. And as you all filled out those questions and forward them forward, Liz and Peter, our planning staff, they've kind of categorized those, and Liz is going to kind of combine some of the questions just to kind of truncate and reduce. When we get through this set, we'll also have availability of our Community Cultural Affairs staff, Nathan and Jennifer, are floating with handheld microphones, and we'll kind of intersperse the prepared questions with questions that you have. So if our developer representatives can join, and I'll also be availability. We, in addition to planning, economic development, we have a representative from the Big Blue Bus and Public Works Department, as well as Community Cultural Affairs, if we get into those questions of need. So with that, Liz, if you want to maybe start off the Q&A process.
So, actually, we have one question. Somebody has asked, which team did the City Council choose in its February session and why? And so maybe I thought we should just clarify in case there are people who don't understand exactly where we are with the process. The City Council hasn't chosen, but there's a recommendation. So do you want to?
Well, just kind of those opening remarks. We went forward to the City Council in February with a recommendation to enter into exclusive negotiating agreements with 26th Street TOD. And as referenced tonight, the council wanted to gather additional feedback from the community at large, the gallery tenants, and various art community stakeholders. And this is the process we've been taking since February. And process-wise, we're planning to return to council. Another area of kind of technical clarification, Mr. Turner was ending his remarks, was in relation to parking. So this is a 5.6 acre site. There's 6 buildings here today. The numbers are actually a little different. There's actually 62,000 square feet of existing buildings composed of 6 structures. And in the process, we asked, in the request for proposal process, we asked the developers if they were interested in building a shared parking structure off-site on city yards. So the city owns the municipal yard site across the street on Michigan. As the proposals were being reviewed, we were working with our Public Works Department, who's here tonight and can provide greater level of detail. We had a variety of, project challenges in order to deliver a development site on the city yards. And primarily that was the redevelopment. Funding was constraining our ability to fund a variety of master plan processes where we have a location in a master plan site for a parking structure in city yards. There's a number of buildings in operations that exist there today. So at some point in the future, about I think 4 master plan phases in, we're going to build new buildings, tear down those existing structures, and ultimately have a development site for a parking structure. However, that point in the future is undetermined. So during the proposal process, we asked the development teams if they were able, two of the 3 teams proposed in building a shared parking. Well, technically all 3 teams said they could build a shared parking structure. 26th Street said they could park the development on site below grade. We asked the teams, could they park on site, and they all responded yes. So one of the responses we were hearing tonight from Mr. Turner was the concern about building parking on site, and then as you're hearing greater level of detail, was there enough parking being proposed as well? So with that, I think hopefully that might clarify the current status of where the city is at in the proposal process.
Okay. So there were a number of questions about the hotels. So I'm just going to pose this in a kind of general way. Questions about why a hotel, what's the need for a hotel, why a hotel, not artist lofts, and the overall size of the hotel. So if you could comment on just on your thoughts of how that element fits into the overall plan for the project in your proposal, and I think.
So let me interject first. The teams proposed a hotel because the city requested a hotel. And that was part of the preferred vision process that I was referencing early in the discussions. So the whole audience wants to know why the city was requesting a hotel be developed on the site. So in the community visioning process for the Bergamot area plan, yes.
Hi guys, my name is Peter. I'm a city planner, and along with Liz, the city planning led a 3-year process on the future of the Bergamot area. It's called the Bergamot Area Plan. It was adopted on September 11th at 2 o'clock in the morning by the City Council. And a discrete piece of that process was a year-long effort on the visioning for the Bergamot Arts Center. Hundreds and hundreds of people came to the Arts Center. We had enormous workshops at the Pier 59 studios when they were still resident there. And through that process of 3 large workshops, 4 focus groups, individual stakeholder interviews with each and every Bergamot tenant, the concept of a hotel, of additional retail, open space, things that would not compete with the art uses, but that would complement them, came out of that process. This was further refined through a number of other meetings, Planning Commission, City Council, and economic research. And the goal was really not to create a grove or a fancy mall of any kind. It was really to help the Arts Center come to terms with the fact that there was going to be a mass transit station coming in the immediate future. And so we were very specific and careful to describe uses that would not compete with the galleries. And a hotel was one of those uses that was considered to bring some life and energy to the space during the day and the evening, as well as providing subsidize this through market rent revenues.
Okay, so I guess, are there any teams that want to comment on their concept for the hotel or anything? You don't have to? Okay.
I mean, I think you said first. It was a given.
There's one behind you. Yeah.
I always told them loud enough. It was already stated that the hotel was a given parameter of the program. Obviously, there's a revenue associated with the hotel for the city that, you know, it was a goal they gave us, and so one we had to meet, and I think it's an important goal. If the economics are, you know, more important than whatever you guys are concerned about, we'll just follow the lead on that. As I mentioned, we have it as our phase 2 for 2 reasons. One, we want to get everything else done first to keep the order of the businesses arranged and open. And 2, it's going to be interesting to see how the train impacts the hotel, because it's going to make it easier to be downtown than to get here, especially at 4, 5, 6 o'clock when it's terrible, or 7 o'clock. So we have to see when we could build it. And secondly, someone asked about the size of it. It's just what we thought would be viable. You can't build, you know, a 40-room hotel and keep it open. So we had to come up with a set of rooms from our hotel partner that they thought could be viable here when the economy afforded ourselves to be able to build it.
It's pretty much an echo. We chose to do the smallest hotel we could, which was, I think, of the 3 proposals, 100 rooms. We tried to keep it, you know, small in scale from both a massing standpoint and also a room standpoint. I believe our box is 64 feet. 100. It may be 101, but it's 100.
I think we looked at things a little bit differently with the hotel, because I think we looked at doing something like a limited service hotel as not being very accretive to the community here. So the hotel concept that we've envisioned and that is reflective in what we're doing in other cities is kind of the opposite of a limited service hotel. Our hotel has rooms, but it also has a bunch of area dedicated toward public spaces. So when David Hertz talked about, you know, envisioning on the ground floor near the center of the property, almost feeling like an art gallery as you're walking through the hotel lobby. That's more of what we envision as part of the hotel, vibrant, active public space, and then with rooms on top of that. But we do think, you know, with the Expo line coming in, the hotel is vibrant, and I think when talking with the community earlier, people mentioned, well, if you're going to do this hotel and do all this development, what happens to what exists today at Bergamot, and are you going to get rid of that? And for us, it's the exact opposite. We wouldn't want to do a hotel in an area that wasn't vibrant and active and felt like it had history in place. We appreciate that, and we think that that adds to the overall feel of the project. Our pro forma has it at 125 rooms. I think it, what is it, 65 feet. I'm with Core Rethink, the first group that presented.
Okay, so I'll ask one more from the questions that I collected earlier, and then Jennifer or Nathan, if you have a question, raise your hand and one of them will walk over to you and be ready for the next question. Okay, so the question here is about cultural inclusiveness, dedicating space and resources to celebrate the diversity of the neighborhood nearby, the Pico neighborhood, and how can the nonprofits focus on the art and work with the museum and create culturally relevant programming for the people in the neighborhood, for people of color, for a diverse population. So any thoughts you have on that?
Sure. I think the plan that we have in mind is to take the management of the arts from the arts themselves, from the people that are here. I think that Wayne's done a spectacular job of making this open and available to a lot of organizations and charities. I myself, my kid's school comes here, and I think that's something we have to continue. And I think that's, you know, you're applauding, and I think you should, because it's not something that everybody necessarily does. And I think the museum has been tremendous with the schools. I think you have to keep that going. And I think we're, you know, in addition to what is here today, we're going to supplement that. We need to have a better
organization of the stakeholders that are here, which includes the community. So we envision a group, a board, if you will, that would kind of oversee the different events. We would supplement that with a full-time person to organize this group, but include both community and on-site community and community outside residents.
First, we kind of took it as the sustainability piece, which was the financial piece, and so we endowed that outreach and community platform first and foremost with some money that was mentioned in the earlier presentation, which is $200,000 that will more than afford a person on site or two, and then on an ongoing basis committed to about $200,000 kind of ongoing. And furthermore, with the idea of the Cultural Media Lab, which is outside of just the fine arts piece of the galleries, which would be more of a gathering point and similar to the MIT kind of media lab where there would be outreach actually beyond just the fine arts and go to the visual and go to the animation. And we work with a lot of tenants that are in the areas that have always expressed a really strong desire to come and give back to the community, talk about job fairs, and there's a tremendous amount of businesses in the area like J.J. Abrams and Jerry Burkheimer, where all these guys would love to come and have a place to kind of give back to the community. And the cultural lab is where we kind of intend to do that. And that's how we were looking at kind of including the community beyond just the borders of just the galleries who do a great job. And obviously the museum does a tremendous job having things every couple of weeks that you can come to. And then in addition to that, with the proper selection of the tenants that were going to be here beyond, like what we're talking about, when people say retail, I think it's important to designate that it's not going to be just any retail, it's going to be completely curated and specific to the area, and hopefully will be a real add, because myself having walked and worked in this area, I think that as much as, you know, you want the right retail, but you also need something that kind of goes above and beyond some of the things that are here with Jeff, who does a great job at the cafe. There's not really anything that happens kind of after 6 or 7, except for when there's a gallery opening. So we kind of look at it, bringing in the community from that basis. And, you know, like Jeff pointed out, not everyone's going to be riding a bike here, but I do think as this area does evolve a little bit, I do think with the bike path that no one's kind of talked about yet, that is going to connect back to the rest of the city, I think you will actually have some network that does get established, and we're going to work really hard to kind of further that network and bring people in on foot and on other modes of transportation. And then we hope that that kind of rounds it out.
With the core Rethink team, our approach was a Santa Monica first approach. What we put in our proposal was something called Elevate the Arts. And what we felt we had the opportunity to do was not to necessarily go outside Santa Monica and look for organizations that are already super successful and have a high profile, but to find the gems that are already here in Santa Monica and help and use this opportunity to elevate them and make them the visible parts, so that, you know, rather than, I won't name any particular organization, but rather than grabbing that organization who already has a high profile, once any organization is here, they will have that high profile, because you'll have the people coming on mass transit. We'll have a big budget for PR and marketing and really get the word out. So we partnered with an organization called Santa Monica Arts Consortium. It was made up of 3 different nonprofit organizations that operate primarily here in Santa Monica. That was a start. One of them is Virginia Avenue Project. They do a lot of the kind of diversity outreach and support of the youth through the arts, and we incorporated them in our proposal as one of the organizations we want to make sure would be supported. So there's that. We've already started that process. We've introduced some of them to some of the existing tenants here and tried to already start to engage them with what Bergamot will become. And the other thing was just a general concept, which is to make sure that there's also programming for all ages. So the museum already does a great job of working with youth. I know that there's a lot of school trips to the site. but youth, people that are professionals, retired people, and make sure that there's programming for everyone so that it's a community resource for all.
Great. We're going to now transition back and forth. We still have a set of questions here that we're going through, but just in order of efficiency. We're going to open this up for a couple of questions to the audience, and then we'll go back to some of the submitted questions as well. Hands up, Mr. Berman.
Yes, hello. Robert Berman. I'm a member of the Bergamot Station Gallery and Cultural Center Steering Committee. And there was one issue that Bill did talk about very articulately, but I would like to, in my way, reiterate. A few minutes ago, Jason, you sat there and said that part of the plan was to, in a few years down the road, take down those horrible buildings that are in the recycling center area and then build a parking structure there. That was one of the plans that would happen down the road. Well, as far as we're concerned, and we've spoke about this on and on, we feel that that should be brought to the front of the road. And in speaking to all three of these incredible people, all three of these amazing committees, they all said that in their initial process, they wanted to build a parking structure there, and they were willing to do it. In speaking to Jennifer in one of our earlier meetings, she said that they wanted to build a parking structure, but none of them were willing to pay for it. And they wanted to put it on the city to pay for it, and that's why it was pushed down the road. So I would like to ask them if indeed they are willing to pay for the parking structure, and if indeed the city will accept that and start building their parking structure, because if you wait for it to come down the road, Bergamot Station will not survive.
So I'm pretty sure the developers will say they will build the parking structure. That's their business. Okay.
Yes.
We will build the parking structure. Well, we think there's a demand that is insatiable in Santa Monica, so it would be really a programmatic thing. When we looked at it, because we did actually look at it in our original proposal, what was suggested is there was a city study that's already been done that I believe is roughly 550 cars. Of that 550, when you take away what the city needs, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was in the order of magnitude of 250 to 300. So it didn't leave an incredible amount of extra. Obviously, you guys have been out, you can build almost anything with the right amount of money and desire to do so. So it wasn't a physical constraint, it's more of a general plan constraint, because there's height limitations and there's FAR and there's all these things. And so that was the original confines of what was suggested when we were in the initial kind of talking. That does not mean that that is a limit that we placed on it. That was more of a limit that was suggested from the city yards and kind of in their visioning for what was going to go on. But we felt that when we looked at it, we really wanted to submit something that we knew we could build, and we knew that that was going to come later. So we suggested self-parking the site for the existing uses that were happening, and then we would add that because, of course, at 200-300 cars, that would be more than doable. And I kind of tend to agree with, I can't remember who the speaker was that mentioned it was 1,000 cars. I don't even think that's really an overstatement. We're seeing complete demand, but at some point, if you keep building too much parking, people are going to always use it, and then it gets into a circular argument. I don't want to try to solve that tonight.
We think the city yards parking is probably the most important thing that's been discussed originally by staff when it was proposed to us. We think that my concern as a resident is I'm fearful that we're building a one-way train. If you can't park at this station, and I know there's a limited parking plan for 17th Street, it starts to become, then everyone's going to go downtown? Is that the only way for us to use the train? And I think that's something that I've personally voiced to people at the city in meetings, because I think it's important that people recognize, I do believe what Bill said, the cars will still come here. And if you don't accommodate them, they're going to impact something else. We own a 1,000-car garage just down the street. And I can tell you, I think, I'll echo this, we would plan at City Yards, you'd build at least 1,000 cars, because you'll need it. Now, what we propose to the city is to build it, not have the city pay for it, that we would build it. We've got to find some sources of revenue for it, whether there's some payment from City Yard employee use, whether there's some payment from customers and tenants here, whether there's some payment from the many events that use it. Somewhere that's got to be worked out. We didn't get a lot of interaction on that proposal. We certainly would entertain a lot of heavy discussion with it, because we think that's the most important move you can make. And you know what? What's the hurry? How long has this been going on? What if you waited a few years? If it's not ready today, if you want to get this right, it doesn't mean you have to do it tomorrow. So we propose in our meeting here, our last meeting here with the organization, with the Bergamot tenants, is that there's no rush. Let's do it right when we can get it done. And if it takes a couple years to work out with the city, we think that's time well invested.
Sorry, all I got to say was yes. I just wanted to say that the one thing unique about our proposal was we were using an automated parking system, and the reason that's important is it's very, very flexible, and we were able to fit in the same footprint that the city gave us, 700 cars, so somewhat more than what was originally contemplated for that site. But it also gives us the flexibility to be more creative in how to phase it. So we might actually be able to build it sooner. As David mentioned during our presentation, it has the ability to be built over existing structures. So if that were an option and we want to get creative, we might actually be able to do it sooner.
Any further questions? Yes, sir.
I just have an average question. I understand the city budget is $500 million. City of Santa Monica. 1% of $500 million is $5 million. That's 1%. And the city doesn't want to pay more than what? I mean, I'm trying to get the fundamental financial response about paying for parking. And the city's $500 million budget, 1% of which would be $50 million. And is this not in the mix of the discussion about city payment?
So obviously another question regarding parking. We have Susan Klein, the Assistant Director of Public Works, and I think let her explain the condition of city yards. There was a reference that a bunch of old buildings there, but they're actually city operations with employees and providing critical city services. So Susan, if you could explain a little further.
Great, thank you. So one of the reasons we put the concept of shared parking into the proposal is because even the idea of redeveloping the city yards is an onion. I mean, once you start peeling away the layers. Funding is certainly one of the layers, with redevelopment funds being clawed back by the state, and money having to go, general fund money having to go to other projects. That's certainly one aspect of funding the yards redevelopment. It's also an operating corporation yards. It's much more to us as a community in the city of Santa Monica than just a dump. It has all of the shop facilities, so carpenters, plumbers, and so forth that maintain the facilities in the city of Santa Monica. It's fleet maintenance that maintains all of the more than 700 vehicles in the city's fleet. It's our transfer station. It's our water resources department. So all of that operates 24/7. So there are multiple phases that have to occur before the parking structure, the area, the footprint of the parking structure can actually move forward. So we have to move all of our fueling stations, fueling facilities that are in the heart of the yards right now. We have to relocate our fleet operations. We have to demolish part of, there's multiple phases before we get to actually building the parking structure facility itself, which is tens of millions of dollars as well as multiple years. And hopefully in this next budget, we did put forward in the capital improvement program budget proposal going to council funds to start the design phase. We've been evaluating the master plan at the yards for many years, and we hope to move forward on the design of some of those initial phases. So we are moving forward, but there's a lot more to it than just clearing the area to build the parking structure. We, again, can't build on larger than the footprint is about 350 spaces that would be used by city employees, but the footprint would really go up to about 500 parking spaces because we have to accommodate our city yards facilities. So we don't have, you know, unrestrained footprint at the city yards either. So that's our maximum footprint. That's why we thought it would be a great idea to partner with this project to build out additional spaces beyond what we would need for the city employees.
So it looks like there's some maybe follow-up questions, Mr.
Sure.
Brock.
Just a quick thought. Just a quick thought on that, though. However, if we are able to close the front part of the airport runway, that would give us, next year, that would give us a number of acres where we could move the city yard away from Fisher Lumber to allow green space in there and allow part of the city yard to be moved to the front part of the airport, in which case parking structure could be built, in which case Mr. Turner and Mr. Berman would be happy, and we wouldn't end up continuously playing whack-a-mole with where's a hotel going to pop up next, where's another development going to pop up next. So that may be an idea. 2015, we're supposed to get part of the airport back.
So, gentlemen, sir. Nathan?
When parking is such an important part on the Arts Center site, why does city staff propose to allow the Hines development across the street a 40% reduction in their required parking, which means that all the tenants and office workers there are going to be using the parking over here, as well as the community itself? The two don't make sense.
Yes, sir?
Might the city workers take the train?
So great statements. There's a couple of questions that we, again, interspersing between Q&A and questions submitted. These I'll just read out and answer. For each team and the city planner, although state law does not currently require seismic research to be conducted in relation to Santa Monica building projects, has the city and/or development teams conducted any safety research in this vein? I'll just say at this point, we have not. This is really conceptual proposal stage. That would really come in as they refine the project and get into actual building design, construction. Another question I can respond to, informational question. Is the museum referred to in all proposals the present Santa Monica Museum of Art question? Or is there another museum different than the one envisioned? If so, what happens to Santa Monica Museum of Art? No, the museum that we continue to reference is the Santa Monica Museum of Art in the proposals. Go back out to the audience. Any pending questions? Yes, sir.
I just wondered if I could get some yes or no answers to three quick questions. The city has decided to build parking, yes or no?
City has decided to build
parking? It's decided. Santa Monica will build the parking. Some parking. Any parking.
In the city yards master plan, there is a parking structure, yes.
So it's decided. The date, design, and location, except next to Garbage Mountains, has not been decided yet.
The date, size, and
design.
Design has not been conducted. Size, we know, 350 employees, so that's a minimum. And location, date, undetermined.
Okay. So is there like a dream or a vision that the parking will merge with the decision on these proposals we've talked about tonight, and somehow that'll magically marry up? Is that where we are right now?
Magic. No, I don't think so. I think we're talking actual real capital budget and facilities that have to be rebuilt and relocated on the city yards to actually make the space available to build those shared parking structure. And then the policy question that's being raised tonight is a timing one. Is there parking to be built on site to support the development, or do we defer into the future? And your feedback is very valuable to collectively, review that. Yes, ma'am. We'll get a microphone to you.
I just want to make sure that all of you are aware that if you do underground parking, we will have to go. Because what the underground parking will do to the small lot that we are on at Bergamot will force us all to go.
So that's more of a statement, but let me pose that in the form of a question to the teams, which is, what is the the business retention plan in relation to construction? We've heard a variety of concepts thrown out there tonight, but based upon the plans that you had today, if you were to build underground parking on site and on-site park the development, what would be each developer's approach in regards to business retention? Existing businesses here, retaining them. If you could start.
We put a lot of thought into retaining the businesses, and there's two reasons that on-site parking is problematic. One is just the disruption, right? The dust and noise and construction fences. So, that's something that I don't think any of us can avoid if we have to build parking on-site. I forgot what the second one was. But primarily it's that. Oh, and the second is the loss of existing parking, right? So you have a surface parking lot right now where people park. So that one we can solve and did propose to solve, which is to use all of the rent that we get during the development period towards retention programs. So if tenants continue to pay rent, then we're able to put that towards retention programs, one of which is free valet service for people that still want to come to Bergamot. So they still pull up in the same place, valet takes their car, and we rent off-site parking for that purpose. So valet drops off the car off-site and goes and retrieves it. That's the best that we can do to replace parking if we're forced to build on the surface parking lot and build underground parking. Short of that, ideally if we do park off-site, under that scenario, then it's much simpler. We have a two-phase plan, and our original proposal had a two-phase plan whereby all businesses would be continuously accessible during development. And we studied that with Morley Builders, who's our contractor, and figured out how we could manage the phasing such that all businesses would be open during the construction period. And in that case, then we don't have to spend the money on a valet and off-site parking. We can spend it on other programs for retention. So we can spend more money on programming, PR, advertising, saying, hey, we're still open, which is what we would do in either case, but we'd certainly have more money for that and more money for rent abatement if that were necessary. So that's it in a nutshell.
We've looked at, first and foremost, sitting down with the people on site and working through a phasing plan, which we think is really most important. The structure of the parking is really just dollars, and whether you go 4 levels down or 6 levels down or 1 level down, in one small section, like underneath the hotel, you could disrupt very little, but it's really about, I think, really the staging of how it all happens. I mean, Jeff's echoed this too, is if you draw it out long enough, maybe some of the magic will happen and coincide. And so what we've talked about doing is a very disciplined phasing where we would not disturb the existing fragile ecosystem, i.e. the tenants and their livelihood, because I know a lot of them and respect them and would never want that to actually happen, because I'm looking at doing this, as a give back in a lot of ways. I know that doesn't sound likely, but it's true. And the last thing I want to do is go in and make my life, never want to be seen again at Bergamot. And so I think part of all of this is really you got to go through the process of figuring out with all the people that are seeing this room, and probably 10 times that amount, to figure out how we're going to actually do it. And this process is about selecting the team going forward that is going to be willing to work with these people and all the stakeholders in the surrounding community to come up with the best plan that everyone can live with, because there is really no magic, it's compromise. And it's about doing that compromise position and then balancing that with the economic equation. And that's what we're really kind of throwing our hat in the ring, saying we really at the end of the day are willing to sit down and go through that process. And
question here, development project. Would the development work with a hotel that has lower height? Question mark, 4 stories, exclamation. So just to provide a basis and then ask the developers to kind of clarify, is all teams, they varied in size of the hotel project, both in room count and height, but they're all generally approximately the same. They're six stories approximately, 90 rooms to 125 on the larger. And so the concept there being is if you took 2 stories off and not knowing the specific room count per floor, you're obviously going to drop some level of rooms by eliminating at least 2 floors off the development. And I guess more specific question to the developers is, what's kind of the minimum hotel development program, i.e. the minimum number of rooms that one would need to have a viable project to operate and finance? Jeff, we can start.
Sure. I think we could reduce the hotel from 6 floors to 4 floors. We could reduce the room count down to a level that's probably 85 rooms on the low end. It may impact some of the open space. We have 130,000 square feet of open space. It might have to eat into that when you plan. It's kind of hard to plan on the fly, but squeezing that box into 4 stories, we don't know if it changes the footprint of the current hotel. If it doesn't, great. If it does, then it would take away some of the open space, is my first response.
I would say, it's a bigger question, and I wouldn't want to try to design on the fly either, but of course you can do just about anything like we were talking about. I mean, we have, part of our parking is a podium that you're parking underneath and receiving the guests down below, and then you're coming across. So if you dropped that parking out, which again is one of the biggest hot buttons everyone's talking about, if you got rid of that on-grade parking, then we could drop it down 1 floor and we wouldn't even suffer any room counts. We have the least room count already, so probably it means, dropping another 10 isn't going to substantially change ours, and we're trying to keep the hotel small on the footprint and really let it blend out into the rest of Bergamot. So I don't think ours would suffer greatly from a staffing or anything else where you have to have a high room count to kind of allow for the staffing. So I would say we'd be able to do that pretty easily without doing the exact math.
I'll defer to Brian, the hotel expert on our team.
We actually feel the same way. I think in terms of room count, we wouldn't want to go below 80 keys, but I think north of 80, more than 80 keys would be fine. So we were at 6 stories, we could reduce it to 4 stories. You'd probably need to have the footprint increase a little bit to fit the 80 room amount in there, but we'd kind of work with our architects and work with the community and figure out the best approach if that's a major issue.
And I would just echo one of the principles that went into our design was high emphasis on maintaining open spaces, as Jeff alluded to as well. You can't create new land in Santa Monica, right? You've got a limited amount of land, and you have to decide what your priorities are for using it. And we felt, and myself in particular, having worked for the city and worked on the Sustainable City Plan, that one of the highest goals for Santa Monica was to create new public open space. And so we really focused on squeezing our buildings as much as we could to open up the space. So you can take levels off and reduce rooms, but if you want to maintain square footage, it starts squeezing out into your open space, and we didn't feel like that was appropriate. So that's why we ended up with a 6-story building.
So thank you for that. We'll go back out to the audience, gentleman here in the second row, and we'll work our way around.
I have a question about the economics. I don't understand exactly, but it seems to me you're saying you'll be able to keep the rents low at the present level for the galleries. You'll be able to create a space for the museum that's free or highly subsidized. You'll maintain inexpensive parking. So doesn't that mean that the commercial spaces have to be at a very high level rents, attracting a very different sort of clientele? It seems to me there's sort of a mix.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the equation. It's a difficult equation. I don't know that I can summarize. Maybe one of these guys can, but yeah, that's exactly it. It's a trade-off between some uses that have higher rents and revenues, and using that to subsidize the site. And we found that the economic engine for subsidizing the rest of the site was creative office, or the best and most complementary use would be that. The hotel, on the other hand, doesn't pay as much in terms of ground lease, but it is a real benefit to the city generally, because there's a high amount of transient-oriented, transient occupancy tax. Crowdsource my answer. TOT that gets paid to the city, so it's a real economic benefit. So there's that balance there that's important to the city.
I'm going to pass on for, thank you.
Yeah, the equation was exactly that. You take the parking income, you take the rent income, you take the subsidies, and you keep pushing it around with the design constraints, and it's a complete boiling pot mix of how everything kind of goes. And I think to say that that's a baked exact, we put something that we would absolutely honor exactly to the T in the proposal, but I think all of that is going to be subject to a lot of community input throughout the process, and it's going to be going up and down and be iterative, because at the end of the day, it's going to depend. Do you go 2 levels down in parking? That's going to double the parking cost almost, and you're going to go through all of that math. But I think at the end of the day, everyone made their kind of bet with where they think rents are, and that's incumbent upon the developer and then their cost of capital. And so we tried to go get the cheapest cost of capital we could, and then we're trying to program the rents that we think will carry those subsidies. And so that's the bet you're kind of making. But it is a bet for the developer at the end of the day.
You know, one point that you made, it's not that all the rents are the same between the 3 teams. I think I mentioned earlier, our rents for the art space are 20% less than the other proposals that I saw. The way you make it up is the office space. I think we all maxed out the office space that was given to us at 30,000 feet, and that's the difference. That's not here today, and that's what makes it up.
My question is about the priorities. The city so far has been putting the cart before the horse, the cart being land use and the horse being the circulation element. We've ignored the circulation element, and yet we're talking about what's going to be right across from the expo station, for which we have no parking. Yet we are talking about an adjacent parking lot, and we haven't discussed that there's no turnaround space for the big blue bus that would make Santa Monica centric big blue bus service going not just east and west but north and south a possible thing, so that this expo station could be the hub of all public transportation in Santa Monica, especially if there were parking directly off the freeway ramp itself, not coming onto the street, but behind the Arco station, and then parking. And if a hotel were in fact built on the city yards over the parking, so that we're not even thinking about that hotel and its impact upon the Bergamot Art Gallery, I'd like to ask how that might affect the plans that you have for the Bergamot Art Gallery. Would that make it better? And could it enliven that in some way that we haven't been thinking about so far?
So certainly if we were able to
solve the requirement for the hotel across the street, we obviously would eliminate it from our plan here. I think you're just bringing up the point that generally all of us made, that we showed you some things. It's not what is going to get done there. It's what, we want to express what our direction was for this project. And those are the kind of things that come out of it. I mean, I think, our team worked on Annenberg, and that was a long process, but I think a very successful one. And that's what we all are going to face here. Whoever you select, it's going to be a community process. That's why there's 100, 200 people here tonight. It's important. So I think we'll look at all that stuff to the extent the city allows it. It's not for us to decide what to do on city yards. It's only for us to respond to opportunities there.
Absolutely. You give a developer land and they're going to figure out how to program it. So I think that's kind of like, a given. But I do think that at the end of the day, the train is going to show up, and I think we need to, as a community, figure out what we're going to kind of present at that time. And I think the ideas and the teams are here to kind of execute on something. And I think you guys as the community have to kind of decide, along with your city council and along with kind of everyone, who you think is going to kind of carry that torch and get it done for you. And we're trying to all sit here and figure that out. But I would love to go by the Arco station, by the way, is for sale, and you could do that. It's a tough site to figure out, but all of those things are possible, but it's going to take a lot more than us just kind of sitting here. But the answer is we would love to consider anything that the community thinks in general is a good idea to consider.
A couple things real quick. I would say that of all of the skills that a developer can have, the one that I'm most proud of and the one that I think that we do the best is community engagement. So we look forward to that process. It's something that I learned, again, from having worked at the city and having stood where these guys stand and know how it works, and very comfortable with that. It's difficult, but it is a skill set. And then one of the other comments was about making this a transit center, and that is kind of how we thought of it. We actually put on the site, off of 26th Street, but on the Bergamot site, a turnout for a Big Blue bus where it could be staged, waiting for the train to arrive. So someone gets off the train, there's a bus waiting for them to get onto. So we did consider that, and there's 2% for the arts is one of the things that is a requirement in Santa Monica. We added to our proposal 2% for transit. So that would go towards that station there. It would go towards the bike stations that were on the site as well.
So thank you. Jennifer, Burry has been very patient here in the front row, and then we'll circle back.
In the proposal to you, the city requested 75,000 square feet for a nonprofit. And this evening, we heard nothing about it. Could you please address it and what you have in mind?
So let me clarify the question and with maybe an update. Mrs. Finkel was asking about the 75,000 square feet requirement and the request for proposal. She stated for nonprofits. I think it was just for art space, and we did not define a requirement, minimum or maximum, related to nonprofit commitment. And I think there is one area of difference in the proposals as to the amount of for-profit gallery space versus nonprofit art space being proposed in the various proposals. So good question for distinction. I couldn't recite the numbers off the top of my head, but there is a difference between the proposals and the variation for-profit versus not-for-profit. And then if the teams want to expand upon the non-profit use activity, and I think that would be great. I would also maybe just add to that question about nonprofit use in the proposals. There's one question that really hasn't come up. Generally, where are the women? Question mark. How do you anticipate incorporating women, children, young families into these spaces? So I think within the nonprofit category, I'd also include those users as well. The teams could give some input. Thank you.
Okay. So was the question about who the organizations, the arts organizations are, or how much space? Both, okay. So you're testing my memory a little bit about the breakdown between for-profit and nonprofit art space, but I think in our proposal we had 34,500 square feet for nonprofit art space and 40,000 square feet, that doesn't add up, 35,500 for nonprofit art space and 40,000 square feet for for-profit, and the 40,000 was strictly galleries, for-profit galleries, and the rest, 20,000 was for the museum, and the remainder, 15,500 for nonprofit arts organizations, some of which would be galleries. I mentioned the partnership with Santa Monica Arts Consortium; they would take up some space as well, and then we'd be filling out the rest of the space with other organizations. And of course, I also mentioned that our philosophy is Santa Monica first, so we're looking at organizations that could be elevated by being on this site and be more successful by being part of Bergamot. How much funds? The subsidy comes in the form of reduced rent, and I think it's city proposed
60%.
60%?
60% below market rate.
Below market rate.
First and foremost, we focused on kind of similar, where we kind of put our best foot forward for the museum, because that's the anchor tenant in our mind. And so we funded that, I think, a little above $15 million in total, both in building the actual structure, fixturizing it, and in the proposed rent, et cetera. And we're leaving a little bit up to them how that's shaped, but that was our first piece, which was the nonprofit, so that was about 20,000 feet. And then we also designated some space for a black box theater. Again, we're working on who that will be. And then next was the KCRW for the programming. We have our amphitheater that is a couple hundred people that fits, so that was a public piece. And then we had the media cultural lab, which was I think 5,000 to 8,000 feet, and that was at the reduced rent, and then almost zero rent in conjunction with the museum, depending on how you look at it. But there was a very large check that was being divvied out for that piece. And then I think it's important to say that I think, having spoken with the galleries at length, I think they consider themselves really a part of that whole nonprofit mix, because of all the outreach they do and public service they do. So we didn't really distinguish, but we did keep to the exact RFP, which was to specify, because there's a different subsidy level, whether it's 60% or 40% of rent.
Yeah, I have the same answer. I mean, I think it's actually 40% of market is what the non-for-profits would pay on site. And we have a total of 90,000 square feet of subsidized uses, between the gallery space, the art space at 65% of market, and the not-for-profits at 40%.
So I can just add that on the smgov.net/Bergamot, there's a matrix that was attached to the staff report, the staff report that went to council. It has a breakdown of the different uses. So I'm conscious of time. We said we'd convene at 8:30. We have 3 people have been patiently waiting on this side to ask questions. Does this group want to allow for 3 more questions, or do you want to convene and then have opportunity to informally speak to the development team and staff? We'll all be here till 9. So what? Yeah? Okay. So you.
There was a lot said, what's the effect on the galleries? There was nothing said, what's the effect on the residents around there? On the Pico neighborhood, we live there. We have now residocracy against the Heinz project. What do we need to do to not have a big hotel and a lot of retail and whatever else at the Bergamot Station? We got the maintenance yards in our neighborhood because I preserved the Bergamot Station. Now we have a hotel and a lot more commercial on top of that. A lot of cars, a lot of everything else. Did you ask us? No, we got trampled with your feet. The art is high up. The residents down, down below. There are a few things for kids, and a few things for this, and a few things for that. Now you want to invite the world to come to your hotel and do a lot, and the residents, they can deal with the cars and everything else what it brings. You did not ask us. The PNA is one of the people who are the neighborhood organizations. We were not invited. Think about that.
Hi, thank you. For a number of years now, the city has been presenting planning opportunities for the community to be involved with, the land use circulation element, the Bergamot area plan, the Hines project, and consistently we've heard from the community that they want to see less traffic, that they want more ways to get around without having to use their car, that they want a more livable community. And it seems to me that it's a project like this, especially next to the Expo Rail, that is an ideal opportunity to be able to implement that philosophy and that goal of the community that we've heard over and over again. And I guess my question is more to the audience. If we keep insisting that the developers in the city provide copious amounts of parking, making it the priority choice to get around, making it easy and convenient, we're going to be stuck with traffic because parking, sure as heck, is a traffic magnet. Sorry, that's a statement, but it's my feeling.
Thank you. So I would like to know if any of you have experience redeveloping a site that's like this, where the primary goal is to maintain as many of the tenants as possible, and one which is historically important. If you've had experience with that, tell us about it. If you haven't, what makes you confident you can keep us all here?
So we are actually a true development company. As much as I'm here to save a lot of what's here, our background is we're a real developer. We actually own our own construction company. I have a number of projects I could share with you on our website where we had existing buildings that we built buildings next to, that we added parking underground next to. We've done it a lot, and I'm happy to share it with you. But it's what we do as a firm on a routine basis. I can bring you maps. I've got a project in Burbank. We built 5 buildings at 5 different times, over 800,000 feet, individually each time, connecting to existing buildings that were operational with the folks like the Walt Disney Company. As an example, we have another project called The Pinnacle, where we added 2 projects in 2 phases. We had 8 radio stations in one building, fully operational during the process. Those are 2 examples.
I'd say the most similar project is probably a project we actually modeled after Bergamot, coincidentally. Blackwelder that had a couple of art galleries ultimately, and then was small metal buildings. About the total scope is almost exactly like this. It's 6 acres. There's 22 buildings. The average size of the tenant is about 6,000 or 7,000 feet, and that's an ongoing project and is really pretty similar, and that's 3101 La Cienega.
And Brian is the lead of the core group, who is the lead developer on our team. So he can talk to some of the development experience that they've had. I would just say that another aspect of maintaining the tenants here and is our selection for our art center manager is Mary Norris, and Mary has been in the art world for a long time, and she's been very patiently sitting there and not getting a chance to speak, but thanks for coming, Mary. And she has existing relationships with a lot of the gallery owners, and of her primary roles during the development period is to be an ambassador. So to be able to talk to them and see what's happening and understand what their needs are and what impacts they're feeling, and communicate that back to us so we make sure that we're accounting for issues that arise. Brian, you can talk about specific.
Yeah, I can just speak briefly. The core group, we're a developer as well, but I think we're probably more known as a redeveloper than a developer, because most of what we do is adaptive reuse. So this is what we do day in and day out, is taking existing buildings. Oftentimes when other developers want to demolish them and build ground up, we reuse existing buildings. So we've won awards for adaptively reusing historic buildings all over Los Angeles and in other parts of the United States as well. I think we've also done a pretty good job at, as we're making plans to redevelop buildings, either keeping tenants in place or sometimes even bringing tenants into spaces that were previously vacant, just because we think creating community is so important during the development process and then after it.
So with that, we're going to draw to close this formal Q&A process. As we referenced earlier, various city staff around the room, the developers as well, have committed to stay through to 9 p.m. And so thank you all so much for attending tonight and providing your comments, both in the comment card. I apologize, Crystal, I didn't understand the question. I did not understand your question. I apologize.